We are here today for a review hearing and also on the department's motion for monitored return, and obviously the objection to that's been filed. We are conducting these hearings through the Zoom program. We're live streaming, and Ms. Taylor is making our record. All right, we'll go ahead and take announcements.
Todd Albee on behalf of the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. I'm present, ready to proceed, Your Honor.
Bill Hamker on behalf of Sierra Lazaro. She's here and we're ready.
Joel Jackson on behalf of Enrique Mendoza, father of Absidy. We're present, ready.
Randy Sherrod on behalf of Matthew Lazaro, and both of us are present.
Stacey Sabella on behalf of the kids.
All right, then, with respect to a review hearing, I'd just like to, and we'll get to the motion for monitored return and the objection to that in a minute. I just want to get a quick update. So, Ms. Campos, what's new since the court reports were filed? Anything?
No, nothing's new. Everything has been the same since the court report was filed.
Okay, Mr. Hamker, anything new on behalf of your client? And again, just talking about a review right now. We're not getting into the other motions just yet.
Your Honor, the only thing I can think of that maybe that was not in the reports was that Ms. Lazaro did have an unsupervised visits with the children, and that has gone well, and they've expressed to her that they want to come home.
All right. Mr. Jackson, anything new?
I just had a question to Ms. Campos. I need to kind of verify in the report, Ms. Campos. You said that Mr. Mendoza's relationship with his daughter has been going well and that the relationship has progressed. Your report was filed September 1st. Has he had a visit since then with Absidy?
Mr. Mendoza actually reached out to me this morning and said that his work schedule had changed. I was not aware of that. I told him to get in contact with the person that watches the visits and see if she could work something else out with his schedule. So that way he can get a visit. As far as I know, they were having visits.
And were they going well?
Yes.
Okay. Pass the witness.
Okay, Mr. Mendoza, were you trying to tell me something?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to clarify that when I'm still having my Zoom meetings with Absidy. I was just wanting to know if I could have a visitation with her in person scheduled, since I have a work schedule like I do, and then I also take my parenting classes on Saturday, and we have to drive out there, and then I have to do my parenting classes as well. So I was wondering if I could have like that date that I could be promised to see her, and then I could take schedule my day off of work and then book my hotel, go down there, have a visit.
Okay, so an in-person visit is what we're talking about. Okay. Ms. Campos, can we try to schedule with him and make, in Mr. Mendoza, you're going to come to where the child is?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, he will have to talk with Stephanie and have her get that scheduled. She's the one that schedules the visits and stuff. I'm not opposed to that. So if he'll reach out to her and kind of get it scheduled, they'll let me know. She'll let me know the date that they set and stuff, and then we'll go from there.
Judge, I was wondering, is there any way, since these cases are separate and they have two case numbers, if we could discuss Absidy and then Mr. Mendoza can be dismissed? I don't like discussing the Lazaro kids when he's in the Zoom meeting because they have no relation to him whatsoever.
I understand that, but they're companion cases, and in the interest of time, we're gonna deal with them jointly. So these folks all have other places to be and things to do. Ms. Lazaro, I'm sorry. We just, we've got common parties in these. So, all right. So, then Mr. Sherrod, anything new to discuss about just a review?
Well, again, on the report that I've got, Your Honor, I'm trying to correct that because I think every time we meet, I've tried to get put in there that he's not complying with these requests. They keep putting that it's mandatory that he attend these counselings. Everything else on page 21 of 22, there's a statement I really don't understand. It says Mr. Lazaro has only started parenting classes due to his pending criminal charges. I'm not really understanding what that means. Again, throughout the whole deal, they're stressing that he needs to attend these classes to be in compliance, and there's no reference to the fact that he's following his attorney's advice on that. I've tried to get these corrected, I think, every time we've appeared in court, but it's just fallen on deaf ears for some reason. There may have been a couple of changes originally from the allegations that were just not correct in the original document that I got. And we would like to try to get some kind of visitation. I think we discussed that supervised visitation with the two youngest children of his. I don't think he's seen them since all of this stuff started this last year and a half, whatever it is.
May I respond briefly, Judge?
Mhm.
Judge, we've attempted to remove any portions of in the report that say that Mr. Lazaro was charged with or accused of anything by any child other than absentee. As far as the service plan, even though Mr. Sherrod is representing Mr. Lazaro and Mr. Sherrod doesn't believe that Mr. Lazaro or is advising Mr. Lazaro not to talk to the counselor, still in the service plan. And the service plan wasn't changed as far as I know. So those are still things that are required before he can have those children returned to him. I don't think that that's where we're at this point in time, but I just want to make it clear that even though Mr. Sherrod is advising Mr. Lucero not to complete those, and I understand why, that doesn't mean that they're not part of our service plan.
Well, there should be some reference in there, Your Honor, that he's not complying because of the advice of his attorney. That's what I've been trying to get changed.
And I don't think it needs to be in that report.
I'm sorry?
I don't think it needs to be in that report. I mean, you're telling the court, she understands.
I did have one question. There was the reference, and I'm trying to pull that up, but I recall the reference to the counseling and due to the comment of due to his criminal charges. My understanding is there's not been an indictment.
That's correct, Your Honor.
He's not been charged.
There was a charge for, I think it was a misdemeanor violating the bond condition, which he pled to and got deferred probation, if I remember correctly. But there's been no indictment or no action taken on the allegations of the child.
So would everybody agree that is inaccurate?
Well, I talked with the prosecutor, Your Honor, and though he's not been indicted, they have not dismissed the original charges, and the bond conditions would still be intact.
The question was, has he been indicted? That's what I thought the judge asked.
Well, I did. I mean, I don't, he was arrested. I assume there's a complaint of some kind out there.
He was arrested and not officially charged for a little over a year, I believe, Your Honor, maybe
Right.
2 years. There was no complaint filed. It was just an arrest.
Right.
And
But
of
did they
course,
finally file a complaint?
I think they did file a complaint. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I know that no indictment's been returned since we checked.
Okay. But there is still a bond condition.
Well, we're not arguing that. We're not.
No, I'm just wanting to see the status quo today. So there is still a bond condition, right?
That's my understanding. Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Sherrod, is that your understanding?
There's some time limitations that apply in these cases, but I'm understanding that whether it's legal or not, the bond conditions are still there.
Okay.
In other words, you can't arrest somebody and leave the charges pending for, a significant period of time without taking any action for an indictment. And I think it's been 2.5 years, 2 years.
Well, I can't speak to what that is. I don't know. Not my field. All right, just a minute. I pulled this report up. All right, it said that he was attending parenting classes. Ms. Campos, have you gotten any certificate on that yet?
From my understanding, Mr. Lazaro had stopped parenting classes because of his work schedule.
Okay, Mr. Jarrett, do y'all contend that he's finished that or completed that?
I don't know for sure. I know the last time I talked to him, which was, I think prior to our last hearing, he had indicated there were some issues with his job and he didn't want to lose his job and he wasn't getting much cooperation on the parenting plan from those people. So it was either you go to that or he would be subject to losing his job. And Matthew, if that's incorrect or anything, please correct that with the court.
No, that's correct, Randy.
Okay, and we know he's not completed counseling. That's a correct and accurate statement. We all know why, but bottom line is the services are in order of the court, but he's not complied with that. All right, he hasn't completed sexual abuse education class. Again, we all know why, but that is an accurate statement. Rational behavior therapy. I show that he has not completed that. Is that correct?
Your Honor, that's correct. To be an accurate statement like you're indicating, it should indicate based upon his attorney's advice, I think. Now,
Okay.
maybe it doesn't need to be in there, but I think it's important later on the disposition of the case because all you have to do is show he hadn't been in compliance. And I think it's important, and I've stressed that from day one, that we put the reason he has not is because of the pending criminal charges. So all I'm asking is it just correctly reflect that he hasn't done that based on the recommendation of his attorney.
So with respect to counseling, sexual abuse education class, and I guess RBT, I'm not sure how that would really be affected, quite frankly, by charges. But if RBT was one of those things that he was concerned about, then I don't have a problem for the report to say he has not completed those things upon advice of counsel. That's fine. Again, that's an accurate statement. So if the department will amend that to reflect as far as counseling, sexual abuse education class, and RBT, that he has not completed those on advice of counsel.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anything else, Mr. Sherrod, as far as anything new to report us, with respect to services or anything?
Not to report. We have been trying to get supervised visitation with the two youngest children. This has basically effectively been a termination. He has not had any contact with the children since those allegations came up on the bond. We'd like to get something either by Zoom. All of it needs to be supervised. We understand that, but he needs to have some kind of contact with the children. And he'd be willing to do whatever to try to start some kind of contact with the two youngest. And I think there's just on the oldest child, we would like that too, but I think there were some issues that would be concerned about whether the incident may have happened at some time with the oldest. So we're not pushing that issue right now, just in case she's a potential victim.
Well, at our last hearing, part of my ruling was we would add therapeutic visits between Mr. Lazaro and his two youngest children, and we would have Azare's therapist discuss with her whether or not she wanted contact. Has any of that happened?
No, and part of the reason is a bond condition, Your Honor. I've talked to Todd on this case. I don't remember the last time, but I've asked him if we could have a meeting with the prosecutor to see if we could get some amendments to the bond conditions, just so we could start that kind of visitation. Nothing's happened on that, and I'm not pointing fingers at Todd or anybody else on that, but I think the three of us have to sit down and come up with some way to correct or modify those issues in the bond. Because I don't think the court has jurisdiction to do that or authority. Right. So I know I've just been trying to get that set up with all the changes in the DA's office. That might be the reason we haven't been able to do it. But if Todd can kind of be the middle person on that and we can get it set up, I'd be happy to meet with him and see if there's anything we can do on that. And they can come up with an agreement. I mean, we're going to do whatever they recommend. We just want to get some kind of contact started.
And I've started those conversations with the prosecutor in charge of the case, Your Honor, but I'll push that a little harder.
Thanks, Todd. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So everybody still knows where, as far as where the court stands on that issue, is if the bond restriction can be addressed, then we can start the therapeutic visits with the two youngest and also with Azrae if she's comfortable with that. So, I mean, that's all I can really. All I can do is give you a prospective order, I suppose, you know.
And I think that helps me, Your Honor. I think that the prosecution and I can probably come up with the words that need to be made so that those bond conditions can be modified to solve that.
Okay. Well, we got to leave that to a different day, I suppose, because I can't do anything about it other than say I'm fine with it if we get the bond restrictions dealt with.
That's all I have, Your Honor. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, then, Ms. Zavala, just with respect to the review and where we stand on everything.
So since it was the issue that was just now discussed, Azrae has switched counselors, and that's noted in the report. She's now going with Melissa Lawson. I know that we had some testimony previously from Lynn Jennings about an outcry that Azrae made. She's made a second outcry to this new counselor. I would object to any contact between Azrae and her father at this point, based on the two different consistent outcries she's made to both of her counselors. I do want to double check and make sure that that information has been provided to Delois Hinders, who is doing the family therapy with mom, because I think it's really important that they work through those issues in the family therapy. I do want to double check. I've got a few questions for Jennifer, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. Jennifer, I know we're trying to work towards a monitored return with mom. And so I know she had this unsupervised visit recently. Before that, like right before, she had to cancel 3 visits because of transportation issues. So I am assuming those transportation issues have been resolved and she now has the ability to get them to wherever she needs to, if we're talking about placing back.
I do know that she was waiting on her car. I don't know if she's gotten it back. I have not spoken with her since I went and saw her a couple weeks ago. She did not have her car at that time. So I'm not for sure. She was waiting to get it back. So I'm not for sure if she's gotten it back or not.
Okay. Have you talked to the kids therapist, Pace Lawson and Melissa Lawson, about whether it's in the best interest to continue therapy for the kids?
We had kind of briefly talked about it, but it wasn't a full discussion about them going back home. They did express that they said that they wanted to go back home.
Right. No. And that really wasn't what I intended to ask, but like if they go back home, have you spoken to Pace or Melissa Lawson about whether it would be helpful and beneficial to the kids to continue their individual therapy when they're home?
I think it would be beneficial, but no, ma'am, I have not talked to Pace or Melissa about that, but I will contact them and see what their recommendation is. And I agree. I think that they need to continue counseling.
Okay. So if I spoke with them yesterday and that's what they told me, would you have any reason to disagree with that?
No, ma'am.
Okay. it sounds like the family therapy with Delois, that they're making some breakthroughs and talking about issues.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so the department's been working towards trying to get the kids home with mom, and in trying to do that, back in August, did you request mom to drug screen?
It was requested by Todd. I believe he's the one that requested it when we were when we all had spoke, and that was one of his requests. That was one of the requests that we had made, and it didn't happen.
Okay. Do you think it would be important before the kids go home that we make sure that that issue is addressed?
Yes.
Would you agree that, well, do you know, is it important to Absidy to have visits with her dad?
Yes, I do believe it's important for her to have visits with her dad. We've maintained contact and a relationship, and they've built that relationship. And I do think that it's important for them to keep that going.
Would it be important for those to continue even when she goes home to mom?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you believe mom has indicated a willingness to continue those?
Not really. I think that she will do, I'm hoping that she will do what's in the best interest of Absidy.
And I'm assuming that if it was court ordered, that she would follow that court order.
Yes, I'm sure she would. Yes.
So and maybe this is a question for the next part of the hearing. I know this gets difficult, but is what the department is asking for today a monitored return of the kids?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you think it would be important that if the kids go home, that they continue that family therapy with Delois Henders?
Yes, ma'am.
I pass the witness.
Has Mr. Mendoza had any in-person visits with his daughter?
He has
No.
had one. He has had one whenever he came. I don't remember what court hearing it was, but it was a court hearing he was in with Mr. Jackson. He did have an in-person visit with Absidy that day. I don't remember what day it was.
Interested in that.
Stacey,
I'm sorry.
you all were talking over each other, so I doubt Amy was able to get that.
I'm
'Cause I
so
could-
sorry, Amy. I know that Absidy would be interested in that.
Well, I've looked back. I mean, the prior court order regarding Absidy. I mean, it's a step-up visitation type order, going into a standard possession order. So, Mr. Mendoza, did you ever exercise those visits, and were you exercising any kind of regular visitation with a child? I mean, I know you live remotely from us, and
To be true, I did. We 3 times. All the other times,
you're breaking up. So,
I seen her for about I visited her. I've seen her before. Only seen her for about 3 times.
okay, you're breaking up. Let's stop, because let's try.
So I've visited her 3 times before all of this had ever happened. This is when she was only 5 years old. I have messages and other things that prove that I've tried to reach out to her and she was not trying to let me see Absidy.
Okay, and I assume when you say she, you're referring to the mother.
To Sierra.
right.
It was, yeah.
All right, and that order was entered a number of years ago. The child was much, much younger at that time. Okay. All right, then. Anybody have anything else as far as review to discuss today?
No, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I do have a question of Ms. Campos, if I could.
Sure.
Ms. Campos, am I correct that from the beginning until now, the department has never thought that drugs were an issue for my client?
I mean, it wasn't the reason for removal.
Well, let me rephrase the question then. So you agree that drugs were not a reason for the removal of her children?
Yes, I agree.
And since the time of the removal, have you ever been alarmed to the degree that you have asked her to have any type of a drug test over the last 2.5 years?
No, sir.
All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay.
And Your Honor, I apologize. I don't know if this goes to the permanency. I don't know if it goes to the monitored return. But I would have follow-up questions about the drug issue and a possible witness whenever you would like to hear them.
Okay, now would be the time.
Your Honor, I'd like to call Angelia Gonzalez. Thank you. And what is your relationship to Sierra?
She's my sister.
And are you currently placement for the children?
Yes.
This case did not specifically originate as a concern for drug use with Sierra. Do you have any concerns about drug use by Sierra?
She's had some erratic behavior, so I do have concerns.
And are you aware that after some of that erratic behavior, a drug screen was requested?
Yes, I was.
Objection, Your Honor. I don't believe the court has ever ordered a drug screen, and there's never been one requested other than Todd communicated with me in a letter of proposed steps for a monitored return under a negotiation process. I don't believe there's actually been a formal drug screen requested to my client.
Well, we'll have to come back to Ms. Campos for that, but not right now. So Ms. Zavala, you can continue with this witness.
Okay. Ms. Gonzalez, in the early part of August, did you receive a phone call from your sister?
Yes, regarding
did she discuss with you her fears about a drug test?
she asked me questions about something that could help her pass a drug test. We did have a discussion like that.
What did she tell you would happen if she took a drug test in early August?
She said she could pass a urine test if she found the correct thing, but a hair follicle she was concerned with.
So when you said she could pass a urine test if she could find the correct thing, was she searching for something to drink to allow her to pass that urine test?
Yes.
What did she think she could drink to help her pass that urine test?
She wasn't sure. She said she had heard about something, vinegar, mother's vinegar, something like that. She asked if I knew what it was. I told her I did not.
What were her words about the hair follicle test?
That if she had to take a hair follicle test, she would be screwed.
I pass witness.
Ms. Gonzalez, did she indicate what drugs she had used?
No, and I didn't ask.
Okay. All right. Mr. Albee, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Hamker.
Yes, Ms. Gonzalez, did she say to you that she had used a drug?
She did not. She just said she was concerned she couldn't pass the hair follicle.
Didn't tell, but she never said she used a drug?
No, we don't speak like that.
Okay. Did she say whether or not she had been around some people that had used drugs?
She didn't say no.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Jackson?
Thank you. Ms. Gonzalez, you testified that you had concerns about Ms. Lazaro because she was acting erratic. How recent did you recognize this erratic behavior?
I would say about July. My brother was living with her, and they would just get in random fights. She would call in the middle of the night, like making us concerned about her well-being. My brother was living there, and he would call concerned she didn't come home. She was calling him at the same time as she was calling us. And whenever she would call, it was always just, a safety issue, a safety concern that we were like, okay, is she going to harm herself? What's going on? That's not the Sierra that we know. She would kick them out. She would not answer the door. And then my mom would be blowing her up. I would call, or we would just be trying to get in contact with her with she wouldn't answer the phone for like a day or two.
Okay.
Mr. Jackson, let me interrupt. Ms. Gonzalez, there's a lot of background talking and everything from where you are. Is there any way you can get somewhere where it would be quiet?
I'm at a doctor's appointment.
Okay. All right,
I'm in the waiting room.
Okay, we'll just do the best we can do then.
Ma'am, what gave you concern during those conversations with your sister that she might harm herself?
Because she would say, I'm not going to be here. If something happens to me, take care of my kids. I can't do this. I'm not like you. I can't do this. And I would try to build her up, and it still wouldn't work. She would either hang up.
Has that been an issue in the past?
To this extent, no.
Okay. And ma'am, the erratic behavior you testified that you noticed that in July, did it continue on into the month of August?
No, I think the last call was in July.
Okay. Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Sherrod.
Just one clarification deal, ma'am. Now, I say your name that you go by is Gonzalez. Was it Ortega before,
Yes.
or am I incorrect?
No, it was Ortega.
Okay, so just out of curiosity, why have you changed her last name?
Because I got married.
And the other question, when you talked to Sierra, did she tell you she was on any kind of prescribed medicine?
No.
Did
She
she
told
ever
me
tell you?
prior, like in the beginning of the case that she was on, there was an incident that occurred with her and my mom, and she had went to get help or went to the pavilion, and they had prescribed her some. But other than that, no, I hadn't heard of any recent
So you don't know whether
prescriptions that she was prescribed.
you don't know whether she was talking about test results on some kind of prescribed medicine or whether it was illegal drugs. Would that be correct?
No, but
Well, you're laughing about
I don't
it.
know why you would be concerned. I don't know why you would be concerned with the drug you were prescribed with. I don't
Well,
understand why that would be a
I've
concern.
had clients.
Okay, wait. Mr. Sherrod, let her finish her answer. Because you're
I was
talking
done.
over each other. Hang on, Ms. Gonzalez. All right. I need Ms. Gonzalez to answer her last question again.
Which question?
Mr. Sherrod asked why you were laughing.
I said, I don't know why you would be concerned about a prescription drug that you were prescribed, why you would need to be concerned about it coming up on a drug test.
Well, you understand, of course, prescription drugs, if you don't tell them, it can result in a positive test, correct? You're aware of
Yes,
that?
I do understand, but that's with a urine test or a hair follicle. So why be concerned about one but not the other?
Well, I guess my question is, she didn't indicate to you she was using illegal drugs. She was just concerned about what the results may be. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Zavala.
I have nothing further of this witness.
All right, does anybody have any other questions for Ms. Gonzalez?
Your Honor, I have one question.
Sure.
Ms. Gonzalez, does anybody in your family have a history of drug use?
Yes.
Okay. So these children are living in your family with someone who has a history of drug use. Was it illegal drug use?
And are you talking about my home or my family?
Are you living with
Like my
anybody?
mom, my dad?
Does your
No, sir.
husband, does he have a history of drug use?
Objection, Your Honor,
No.
relevance.
Okay. First of all, same thing, Mr. Hamkert. You all
No,
are talking over each other.
Yeah.
Just
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor. I'll pass the witness.
okay.
If the father lived,
Ms. Gonzalez, is there anyone living in the home with you and the children that has a history of drug use?
No.
Okay. Is there some other family member that has had a history of drug use?
Yes.
And who is that?
My father, he passed away.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, does anybody have any other questions for Ms. Gonzalez?
No questions.
No, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Gonzalez, is she free to go at this time?
No
I have-
objection.
No
No
objection.
objection, Your Honor.
Okay, Ms. Gonzalez, thank you very much. I appreciate your time with us this morning. You're free to go.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Vala, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, I want to come back to Ms. Campos to clarify. Ms. Campos, have you requested Ms. Lazaro to go drug screen during this case?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Let's move forward to the department's motion for a monitored return. What is the department's plan? I mean, if I grant that, what does that look like? Tell me what the plan looks like.
Judge, we would begin the process of trying to return the children to Miss Lazaro immediately, with the understanding that we would continue family counseling, individual counseling for both Miss Lazaro and the children, and that we would continue to monitor that return. We would ask that you order that Miss Lazaro take a drug screen, just so that we have a clear conscience and make sure that everything is clean. As far as Mr. Jackson's client, we would encourage continued visitation with Absidy. In Your Honor, that would include a face-to-face visit if he comes up here, and we will sure make sure that happens. In addition, Your Honor, we would ask that you restrict Mr. Lazaro's contact with Absidy and Ezra. And Your Honor, I will do what I can to make sure that we can get therapeutic visits between Mr. Lazaro and the two younger children. We would ask that you continue this case, continue the department's temporary managing conservator, so that we can continue to monitor that. Our concerns are that Ms. Lazaro has not always been as protective as she should for the two children that were victims. But it seems like she has taken steps to alleviate those concerns, and that's the reason we're asking that you allow us to return these children to her, but that you continue that as a monitored return with the counseling involved.
Okay. Mr. Hamker.
Your Honor, we have no problems with the continuation of the family counseling. I think that's been good for all those concerned, especially since they've been out of the home for such a long period of time. She has no problems with continuing her individual counseling because that's been good for her. And as long as she can work it in with her work schedule and the department's willing to help with that, there's no problems with that. We noticed in the report that they're asking for an order. In the one report, they asked for an order keeping Mr. Lazaro away from Absidy. At the current time, we have no problem with that. I think that's probably wise. I noticed that's not contained in the other report, But as Todd said, that probably should cover the other oldest child as well. I just as an individual who protects people's rights in the practice of my profession, there has been no concern at the time of removal regarding my client's use of any illegal drugs. If that was a concern, they should have been requesting her to do a test long before now. And I don't think it's right after she's completed each and everything that they have asked her to do, she's done and done more. And I don't think it's right at this point in time, admittedly with their position under oath. And we would like for the children to be returned as quickly as possible. They've admitted the children want to be returned to their mother as soon as possible. And I think that's the best. I mean, I can't think of what damage may have been done to the relationship of these people over this long period of time. And it's time for these children to go back to their mom.
Mr. Jackson?
Your Honor, I guess a little taken back by the department's position on this morning. In their report that was filed on September the 1st, there was a continuing danger statement that was made within that report that there's a continuing danger that Ms. Lazaro might give Mr. Lazaro access to Absidy, and returning her to Ms. Lazaro would be contrary to the welfare of Absidy. And it seems like they've kind of turned around on that position. And then we learned this morning through testimony from Ms. Gonzalez that Ms. Lazaro has concerns about passing a drug test, and Ms. Gonzalez had concerns for Ms. Lazaro's personal welfare, well-being. She was concerns about self-harm. I don't know that it's in the best interest. I think the court needs to take that in consideration. My client, Mr. Mendoza, 100%, if the kiddos are going to be returned to mother at some point in time, 100% is asking for a restraining order that Matthew Lazaro is not allowed to be anywhere near Absidy at any time during their time of possession. And also, if the court is going to allow Mr. Mendoza some visitation, I would ask the court to be specific in that visitation so that it can be enforceable, because we've had a lot of issues about not having contact with this child over years, over a period of years. There's been a lot of parental alienation, and we want to be able to enforce that if the court so chooses to return this child.
May I respond, Your Honor? May I respond, Your Honor?
I said yes.
Certainly, I don't think any of us could comprehend us not being emotionally affected if our own children were removed from us. There's no doubt that my client has gone through a tremendous emotional stress as a result of having the allegations which were made against Mr. Lazaro made regarding her own children, and then having her children taken. And we're not denying the fact that she's almost been broken by this tragic event that's taken place. And yes, she has sought medical help to try to keep herself to where she can function and work as a mom and try to complete all these things that the department has put upon her to complete. And with the help of medical people, she's been able to make it through this and complete all these things. So to think that anybody that's a human being can go through what this woman has done without being affected emotionally and physically and mentally, that's not realistic. If we've ever had our own family members, that I'm sure we all have at some point in time, who've had troubles in their lives, they've been affected, and especially with children, it rips your heart out. And this young woman has done the best she could. And has she taken prescription medications from doctors that probably wouldn't pass the test? Yes, because doctors have given it to her to help her make it through these types of things. And, you know, it surprises me just watching from a position that, you know, I know the state cares about these kids, but do they care about like the people that they affect? Have they asked for any medical records? No. Have they asked for any psychiatric records? No. I think in the scheme of things for all cases, not just this one, but from the other ones, people need to be looking at the whole family unit, not just a narrow scope. And to hold it against this lady for trying to do what she had to do to be able to complete what's been ordered by the department and the court, I don't think that's fair. And I think the best medicine of all for her would be to have her children come home so she can hug them and have them live with her again.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sherrod, with respect to the monitored return, does your client have any position about that?
I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that Ms. Gonzalez is the one that's receiving the money for the children, that she's indicated through a number of these reports that she would like to raise them in the future. I don't think the court can totally ignore that position that she's taken in the past. The court, with my understanding, has said that if the child feels comfortable with supervised visitation with her father, that would be permissible. I fail to understand why supervised visitation, either on Zoom, something where he can talk to his children that's monitored, could be damaging to the child if she does want to see her dad. I don't want us to lose sight of the fact also, Your Honor, that this girl denied anything happening to her for an extended period of time until she started counseling with the Jennings. And I think that needs to be considered also. But I fail to understand how there is any kind of danger with the child trying to make contact with her father if she feels comfortable with that and wants to do that, and it's supervised. And of course, we've never requested any kind of visitation to the other girl because of the charges. But I would just ask that the court basically require the department to see if she would feel comfortable with supervised visitation by Zoom, by telephone, whatever, just some kind of contact that needs to be made. And that's all we're asking for, Your Honor.
Okay, and Ms. Zavala?
Your Honor, I think there has been progress made with the family therapy with Delois Hinders. The children do absolutely want to go home to mom. I am on board with a monitored return as long as she's clean, or whatever she's not clean for has a prescription. I've got no problem with that. It looks like there's some minor issues that need to be worked out, like transportation. Those can be worked out. But I think it is very important that we maintain that stability in terms of the counseling for the children. It's been stated, there's no need to go through it again, but ASRA has been very consistent with 2 separate counselors at this point. And so it's very clear that all the children have opened up with Pace and Melissa Lawson. I feel that the monitored return is necessary to make sure that we don't lose that progress for the kids. And in terms of our cases, the facts and the situations in our cases change constantly throughout the course of the entire case. We are having to decide right now whether it is a safe place for these children to go home to right now. And even though drugs wasn't an issue at the beginning, it now has become an issue. And I can't recommend in the best interest of the kids without knowing what that situation is. So I am asking for a hair follicle and UA today.
Okay, so
Mr. Lazaro is gone.
yeah, it looks like he fell out.
He's on the phone.
We'll see if he gets back in. I'll watch for him.
Mr. Lazaro called us and said that he's still listening on the phone, even though I think he's been taken off the video. He is still available, Your Honor. He just wanted us to advise you of that.
Okay. All right, so here's where I see that we are at. Our dismissal date is 4 days from now. I can't possibly get a drug screen done and results back in 4 days. So based on what I've heard today, I am going to order mom to go drug screen, hair and UA. But because of the timing of all of this, and I'm not comfortable putting the children back in her home until we have those drug screen results. And then even then it would depend on what those show. You know, if it's positive at a low level for marijuana or something like that, then, you know, that's not probably going to be an impediment. So, you know, the problem is I can't get that before a dismissal date. And we're not set for a final hearing today. So this is not a final that I can call and recess. So my choices are either to grant an extension in the case, order a monitored return, or just dismiss. So based on some of the things I've heard today, I think a dismissal of the case today is premature. And part of that, I will just say, is my concern about what I've heard about drug use today. So I just want to make sure we're good. I'm, you know, it's not been a concern throughout the case, but let's just make sure we're in a good place on that. The second concern I have is that we're not very far along with Mr. Mendoza in visits with his child. And I think the department can be of assistance there to get more of that going. And Ms. Campos, you know, I think that does need to happen. She's 12 years old now. Big difference than when, you know, his visits were first ordered. She was very, very young. That's a problem we have. We still have this bond restriction that's still just hanging out there that's preventing us from really moving forward with Mr. Lazaro and his children. So I'm going to find there are extraordinary circumstances that warrant an extension in the case. So I'm going to order the extension in the case. I'm going to order mom to drug test today, hair and UA. Ms. Lazaro, you need to be out at Care Express before 4 p.m. today. If you do not have transportation to get there, you talk to Ms. Campos and either she will take you or she will arrange for someone to transport you. Okay. And then when we get the results back, if everything's negative or if there is something positive, then I want that forwarded to me and let me look at it. But if it's negative, the department can go ahead and then place the children with mother. Placement, not monitored return, placement, since I'm granting the extension. So if the drug test is negative, we can go ahead and place with mom. If it's positive, then I want to look at it and then I'll make a decision whether to place or not place with mom. Individual, I mean, and if we're, you know, obviously during this time frame, I think it's great for the individual counseling to continue for everybody. I think the family counseling needs to continue. Let's ramp up the visits between Absidy and her dad. And by the way, I'm fine with those being unsupervised at this point. If the bond restriction is modified, if y'all get that worked out, then Mr. Lazaro, I'm going to go back to right where I was at the last hearing. Mr. Lazaro can start having therapeutic visits with the two youngest children and have Azrae and her therapist talk about how she feels about it. If she's willing to do some visits, I'm willing for some therapeutic visits. Obviously that's supervised, you know. So it's just whether or not she wants that contact or not. I am going to go ahead and put in a no contact order between Mr. Lazaro and Absidy in that case, in the event the bond restriction is lifted. Because I think Absidy's situation is different. So Ms. Lazaro, if the kids all come home and are living with you, Mr. Lazaro is going to have therapeutic visits with his children, but there's no contact between him and with Absidy. You understand that? Okay. And that's just, you know, Absidy has been adamant about her situation. And I find that there's just no benefit from her having to have any contact with the individual that she has alleged is a perpetrator against her. There's no psychological benefit. There's no benefit to this child for that contact to occur. He is not her father. It just doesn't need to happen. So if the bond restriction gets lifted, then that will be in place with respect to Absidy. With the other with his children, we're going to just start therapeutically. So, that's the other reason for the extension, folks. I mean, we haven't even gotten to dip our toe in the water on getting Mr. Lazaro worked back in with his own children. So I don't know, Mr. Audi, Mr. Shirt, as soon as you guys can pin somebody down and try to make that happen, you're certainly free to tell them that I've given you all the go ahead, if that restriction is just modified somehow. And maybe even just modify it to say, as this court orders or deems, in the best interest of the children, something. But, until then, my hands are just as tight as your all's. And I'm sorry about that, because it is really at the point now where it's a real impediment.
I'll make sure that
in this case.
I've spent efforts today to get that resolved, Jordan.
Okay. Because I think just because I've granted a 6-month extension, for Ms. Lazaro, Mr. Mendoza, for your all's benefit, and then if Mr. Lazaro can still hear me, doesn't mean we'll stay involved for 6 months. I hope we won't, but I just think there's still stuff that we need to try to do and that we can actually be helpful with. We always like to monitor kids for a few months when they go home. Ms. Lazaro, this isn't any comment directed at you. I mean, nobody's singling you out. I mean, it is pretty much the department policy to monitor for 90 days. It's this court's policy to monitor for some period of time. I don't always insist on 90 days, quite frankly, but just till we make sure the kids have transitioned home, things are going smoothly, you've got what you need for the kids, kids are getting to school, they're getting to their doctor's appointments. I mean, that the wheel is turning smoothly. Okay. And if there are hiccups, that we can try to assist you. Because bottom line is, I want the children to go home. That's where we want the kids. So, so just because we've got 6 more months doesn't mean we got to take all that time. And I hope that we don't. So, now, counsel, there still is the jury trial request.
Sorry,
I've got to set a final in this case. So my question is, I think Mr. Hamker, was that your request?
I believe so, Your Honor.
Okay. Do you still want the jury trial? And or is anybody else relying on that request? I need to know, because we've got to set it. And that's more complicated than what you all probably know, because I don't have a dedicated court reporter. So I've got to have not only somebody's courtroom, but I've got to have one of the referring court's court reporter. And I'm just telling you, that is a big hill to climb. And I'm only going to have certain windows to do that and dates to give you guys for a jury trial.
Well, Your Honor, my response
if I'm going to hear it, if the referring courts are going to, if one of the referring courts are going to hear it, then that's up to them, and you probably have more flexibility with as far as when that's going to happen. But I've only got so many jury weeks per year that I can take advantage of because of the court reporter situation.
Your Honor, I wished I could give you an answer today, but in lieu of some information that's been made, allegedly been made today, I probably need to wait at least until after those drug tests come back so that I can have the opportunity to visit with my client to see what she wants to do with respect to that request.
Miss Katie, what's our jury trial week that we have coming up?
Well, Judge, I had talked to the 108 and their jury weeks have changed. So I don't know when they're available anymore. The next one I have is in January 22nd, but I'm going to have to confirm that their jury week is still good out of the county court at law number 1. That's all I have.
Yeah, not that neither of these cases are county court at law. It's just that's just the next available jury week that we have where we've got a court reporter.
Yeah, and that is if their stuff hasn't changed. I have to confirm with them too, to make sure that's still a good week.
Okay,
So we would have to have a review hearing before the January 22nd date, if I can get it in on that date.
all right, let's just announce the next review hearing. Let's figure out that date. And then all I can do is say, once Mr. Hamker tells us whether he still wants his jury trial or, counsel, I'd need any of you then to tell me you're relying on that request. If we don't have to have a jury trial, obviously we have a whole lot more flexibility.
So I calculated it to be January 4th at 9 for the review.
All right. So unless something else happens between now and that date, then our next review hearing will be January 4th of 2024. Is that a 9 o'clock docket?
Yes, Judge.
Okay, 9 a.m. So that at least gives us another date on the calendar, but truly then, Mr. Hamker, as soon as you can, if you would let us know about this, because I know it doesn't sound like it should be such a monumental thing, but I'm telling y'all, it's a huge deal for us to get one of the other courts reporter for a full week.
I understand.
So there's a lot of people that are affected by this. So I've got to know.
Can you clarify where you said for me to go before 4?
Yeah, you need to go out to Cara Express.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, it's kind of out there by Sam's Club, just south of there.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
If you don't have transportation, please do talk with Ms. Campos. So
No,
she'll send out.
You just said before 4?
Before
You need to be there. Yeah, certainly well in advance of 4. That's the cutoff. So
Okay.
the sooner you go, the better. But Ms. Campos will need to send the paperwork over.
Okay, Ms. Campos, can you let me know when you send that over so I can go over there immediately after you send it?
Yes, sure will.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll continue the department as temporary managing conservator, and I'll continue the children's placements, our placement, and then I'll see everybody back on January 4th of 2024, unless we have, resolution before that time, which is entirely possible.
Your Honor, I have a question of the court.
Sure. Mhm.
In your rendition of the order, you said that my client, Mr. Mendoza, could have unsupervised visits with the child. It's my understanding in the past, the visits that he's got have been for about an hour. Could you clarify what amount of time and how often he can exercise these unsupervised visits if he's able?
Okay, well, if they're virtual, I would say an hour is still, with a 12-year-old,
Yes, ma'am.
that's still appropriate. If
Yes, ma'am.
he comes to this area to visit with the child and he can spend, if he can spend a couple of days overnight, and spend a couple of days, I'm fine with the child being with him for the duration of that visit.
Thank you, Your Honor.
As long as the department has contact information and knows where he's staying, and they are the managing conservator. So but if he comes to Amarillo and can spend a night here or something like that, and then I'm fine with the child going with him and spending that time.
Okay, thank you.
Until then, I want the virtual stuff to continue, so
Yes,
that
ma'am.
they're building a relationship, and I think by then I think she'd be comfortable with that based on what I've heard.
Can I say something real fast? Mr. Mendoza, please reach out to Stephanie. Actually, never mind. Don't reach out to Stephanie. I will let her know that your visits are unsupervised. And then we'll figure out a way to get them set up with you and Absidy, not with us. So that way you and Absidy can have a virtual visit outside of us.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'll get with Angelia and see if she can get that set up.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Mendoza, I'm going to caution you, like I do most parents when we're moving to unsupervised. You don't discuss the case with your daughter.
Yes, Your Honor.
You don't talk about that. Okay. All right. I need a new dismissal date. I just realized I haven't announced that.
Judge, can I request that they make sure to ask Absidy what she wants? If she wants to see Mr. Mendoza, I have no problem with that, but I do know that she does have concerns that we have talked about in family counseling. So she goes back and forth on that. He's just what happens in their visit, she discusses with me and how it bothers her. That's on her to explain that. So I just asked that before they schedule that and he makes the drive out here, that Stacy, Miss Compos, whoever, asks her and make sure that that's what she wants.
I met with her 2 days ago by herself, just me and her. We discussed that, and she is fine with in-person visits. She thinks that the visits are going well. They're important to her. And so.
And she's also 12 and she changes her mind every minute. So just saying.
Well, and sometimes 12-year-olds like to tell everybody what they think they want to hear too. So I'm going to kick it to Ms. Zavala and the therapist. And, you know, if the child says she's comfortable, then that's great.
And that's fine. And does my therapist get a say so if she discusses that in family therapy?
She certainly can report back to Ms. Zavala, and she could report back to the child's individual therapist.
Okay, I will inform her to do that. Thank you.
Judge, the new dismissal date will be March 9th of 2024.
March 9th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much, Hannah. I appreciate it. Okay, then, thank you, everybody, and I'll see you back in January unless we've resolved all this prior to that time. Mr. Hamker, we will await instruction from you.
Thank you, Honor.
Okay, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Oh, Your Honor?
Yes,
Could, when you get those results, would you mind forwarding those, a copy to me?
I'm sure the department will file those.
The
So
department.
Yes, we will. Yes.
That'll help me make,
you would, I assume, get them through all the e-file.
thank you.
Odds are you all will see them before I do. So, okay, thank y'all.